Welcome back to Untaming Masculinity, the podcast where we tackle issues relevant to men and their journeys to reclaim their masculinity. I'm your co-host, Dan, and as always, I'm joined by our other co-host, Brad. How's it going, man?
Oh, same, different week, same story. Tonight, put my kids to bed. My son took out lip gloss and decided to put it all over his head. So I looked over, he had a shiny forehead and shiny cheeks, and it was awesome. So it was cool. Got to clean that up before I went to bed. How about you? How are things?
Things are good. I was a little disappointed today. So my daughter's playing middle school lacrosse, or one of my daughters, and they had an away game. So it sucks because these games start at like sometimes 3:30, sometimes 4 o'clock. So it's tough to get to all of them. Didn't end up going today, and she scored her first goal of the season.
Man.
She's been playing defense for like the last 2 years, hasn't even had like a shot on goal, and then she scores one today. They were up so much she was playing attack, and I missed it, but oh well.
That's a bummer, but that's kind of an awesome little segue into our topic today.
It's a perfect segue.
Yeah.
So yeah, we were banging our heads against the wall a little bit today, talking about what topic we wanted to get into, and the topic of competition came up and why it's important for men. I know that both of us are pretty competitive guys, so this should be a pretty lively conversation, I would say.
Yeah.
But let me throw it to you first and ask you a question about competition. How do you treat life and competition in general?
Oh man. So you could talk to my wife, you could talk to my family growing up, you could talk to my friends. I've always been a fierce competitor. I've always wanted to win, whether it's a board game, whether it was Call of Duty, whether it's a basketball game, whether it's cycling, anything. I've never set out on anything to lose. And a lot of times when I had set out on these journeys, I wasn't always the most well-equipped or the best. And sometimes I got my ass kicked. And I could never take losing well. So is that necessarily healthy? No, but it does suggest the fact that we as men are competitive creatures. We're wired to win. So, I mean, I guess for you, how do you feel about the topic? And secondly, why do you think we're wired to win?
Yeah, I mean, I am just like you. I don't care if we're playing Go Fish. Like, I'm gonna win. I don't play to play. I play to win, and that's just the way I am. And I have this saying in my house a lot with my kids. They'll come and say, "Well, Dad, it's not a competition." I'm like, "Life is a competition. Everything in life is a competition. I don't care if you're at work, you're at school, you're at home. Maybe not so much at home, but still at home. It's a competition for attention. It's a competition for resources, for time. I mean, everything in life is a competition, and I view it that way. And I believe it makes people better because you have to rise to the occasion. But I think men in general are wired for competition. I think it's more innate in us. And you can go back to, we were talking a little bit before the call, right? You can go back to the beginning. The guy who hunted the saber-toothed tiger, he got to eat, and the other guy didn't. Now, it may be like a tribe situation where everyone gets a little piece, but the hunters, man, they were the champions, and they got the hottest cave babes, and the whole 9 yards. The competition and being on top is primal to our existence as men.
I mean, you've got to go all the way back to Darwin and the whole concept of the survival of the fittest and evolution at its best. Men have always, just like you said, the man who clubbed the biggest saber-toothed tiger got the pretty girl. I mean, even think of animals. Look at lions. Lions will fight one another. These male lions will fight one another to be the king of the pride. It's what men do. Now, obviously, before we start, we do have to probably discuss the fact that there is unhealthy competition, and I have lots of examples of being unhealthily competitive versus healthy and natural and good competition. So I think that it's probably worth a discussion as to which one is which. So I guess to lead off, I'm going to tell you guys a story about my bad competitive streak where I realized that while being competitive is important, that handling it inappropriately is a bad thing. Oh man, I've got a lot of these stories. So I've got to pick a good one. Okay. I had started at my current company about 4 years ago, and I, at the time, played a lot of ping pong, and I thought that I was pretty decent. I can move side to side. I felt like I was all right. And there's this guy who wanted to play against me. He's a developer. He was wearing a shirt that was 3 sizes too small, so his belly was poking out. He was really out of shape, and he looked like he wasn't very coordinated. The competitive side of me is like, I got this, man. I'm going to rock this guy's world. And we started playing, and he had the meanest backspin I've ever seen. And I'm just sitting here thinking, how is this possible? How is this guy kicking my ass? And what would happen is when I get really competitive, sometimes I just try so hard to win that I notice that sometimes emotion comes into play. So he kept beating me and he kept beating me, and I kept getting more frustrated. And in things like ping pong or sports, when you get more frustrated, you become more prone to mistakes. So a lot of self-forced errors, yada, yada, yada. Eventually, he's on the cusp of just thrashing me. And I decided I'm going to throw my paddle. Why I decided to do this, I couldn't tell you. But in our office, there's a ping pong paddle or the ping pong table. There's a TV 30 feet away from the table, probably. So I fling the paddle out as I'm swinging. And where does the paddle go? The handle goes right into that TV, splinters it. I'd been at this company 2 weeks. I thought I was going to get fired. And it was at that moment where I realized competition is good, but unhealthy competition filled or guided by anger is bad. So I guess the question becomes, Dan, this is a question I think you'd be pretty apt to answer, is where's that line? Where's that balance between shitty anger competitiveness and true manly competitiveness?
It's a good question. So you're telling that story, I was laughing, of course. But the one thing that I kept saying is you're talking about, what was the term you used? It was bad competition or
like angry competition.
Angry competition. There's no such thing as bad competition, right? To me, there's competition is competition. It's how you handle it, right? You're a bad winner or a good winner. You're a bad loser or you're a good loser. But the competition itself is competition. It's neither good nor bad. The competition is not what has that effect. It's your mindset and your ability to manage the situation. That's part of why guys in general who are competitive and are successful is because they're able to not get too high on the wins and not to get too low on the lows. And that allows them to your point, like with ping pong, where if you get too emotionally invested in the bad plays that you've made, you start to make bad plays. These guys, they don't get that emotional roller coaster. They become more successful. So I don't think that there is like negative competition or whatever the term was that you were using. The competition is a competition. It's the person who can control his emotions who is most successful most of the time. Now, obviously, there's skill involved in every competition, right? Whether you're playing Monopoly or you're in the NFL,
right? But
your ability to control your emotions. I think about like a professional goalie in hockey.
Yeah.
Can you imagine what would happen to a goalie if all they concentrated on was the last goal that they gave up, or a pitcher who gave up a home run? They'd be destroyed in their career. They have to brush it off and pretend that it almost never happened and just get after it again.
I've used this. I think I might have actually mentioned Tony Gwynn before in a previous episode, but I remember once in life somebody told me, we as men fail much more often than we actually succeed. They cited Tony Gwynn, who's got a career .330 batting average or whatever that is, which means that Tony Gwynn was successful only 1 out of every 3 times he stepped into the batter's box.
Yep.
Think of Ted Williams. He had 400 in a season. That still meant that 6 times out of 10, he failed. But what keeps these men getting back up? And I believe that that's where you're going, and that's the lesson and the big takeaway that I took from that is, did I decide competition is bad, wanting to be competitive and wanting to win is bad, so I boxed that up and put that away? No. I learned to more appropriately channel that and learn from that. Because we as men, we learn from our failures as much as we learn from our successes. And oftentimes those failures, if we use them appropriately as fuel, will provide us that motivation, that strength, that determination to win, right? Like I think of my foray into jiu-jitsu. When you're new at jiu-jitsu, I've been doing it for 3 months. all it is continuously getting your ass kicked. Constantly. I went today, there's a guy who's been going a few more months than me, and we were pretty almost even, but everybody else just ripped me to shreds. And it would be really easy for me to just keel over and say, you know what? I don't have it. I can't do this. I'm going to suck. It's going to take me years to get good at this. But there's this competitive urge, this drive inside of me that says, no, I got to see this through. I've got to keep going. I've got to keep progressing so that one day I can beat these guys. I know that's not going to be overnight, but it's that drive and that fuel that's inside of me that keeps me going back, knowing that, all right, I'm going to roll around with these guys and get tapped and get choked out, and somebody's going to get me in a guillotine and I won't be able to breathe, and it's going to suck, but at the same time, I love it. That to me is competition. It's knowing that you're going to fail and you're going to regularly fail, but you're going to use that failure as a reason to continue to push yourself harder, further, faster, and push yourself to your limits. I know you and I haven't talked about this much, but you're a big mountain biker, right? In addition to a lot of your forays in the gym.
Yep.
I'm sure you see that same thing. Like, you're probably much more performative when you go ride your bike with your buddies than you are by yourself.
Mountain biking is interesting for me because it can be both. It's both a personal, competition, meaning I can go out on the trail, and if I'm not with anyone, I can compete against myself on, the times that I had on the last time I was at that trail. Or, with buddies, it's you're riding around, and are you keeping up? Are you going off certain features that they're going off? Are you making the climbs as fast as them? That kind of stuff. And there's also, with stuff like mountain biking and snowboarding and some of those sports, right? There's that competitive nature of being like, well, I'm not going to be the only wimp who doesn't try this. So there's a little bit of machismo in there too, right? But say you're snowboarding with your buddies and you go down through the park and everyone hits that feature. Well, you're not going to be the only one who doesn't try it.
Right.
I've probably blown out a few knees doing that, but I will say that while I've been injured doing stuff like that in a lot of different things, football, mountain biking, snowboarding, the competitiveness of wanting to stay with the tribe or be better than the rest of the guys there has pushed me always to become a better athlete in whatever I was doing. And the same thing happens at work, right? You show up at work and, there's a guy who's a great engineer. There's a guy who's a great manager. Whatever your position is. I've always felt like, well, there's no reason why he can outcompete, outperform me. What's he doing different? Let me try to figure that out. And that has always driven me to be better at what I do. So, yeah, there's internal competition and then there's external competition. I think they're both valuable. Your story about, jiu-jitsu reminded me of, I'm going to sound a little Al Bundy-ish here, but reminded me of high school football. I played on a team that was absolutely horrific. So I played varsity 3 years, and we won a total of 5 games in 3 years. My last 2 years, we only won 1 game a season, and the only team we beat was the teams that didn't win any games that year. So it was hard in terms of not seeing success. But what we did as a team, it taught us a lot too, right? That failure in competition taught us to work hard. It taught us the value of leadership and the value of teamwork. Because no matter what happened, we had a bunch of guys to rely on, and we just kept coming back and playing hard. And we had multiple coaches from other teams tell us throughout the years that, hey, listen, we might beat you guys every year, but you're one of the toughest games on our schedule physically. You guys just don't quit. You're not the most talented team in the league by far, but you don't quit. You don't stop fighting. You don't work. And that to me is also part of competition. Just because you're not the best there doesn't mean you stop competing. It means you keep working hard. Your jiu-jitsu is a perfect example. You're getting your ass handed to you every time you go to class, right?
Oh, yeah.
But you don't stop, and you work hard, and you learn a little bit every time. And eventually, there's going to be a day where you make somebody tap, and you go, holy crap, like I've progressed. That to me, more than anything else, is the value of competition. Now, we can talk about the value of competition in sports, the value of competition in academics, the value of competition in the workplace. And I think they teach you all different skill sets. But the biggest overarching skill to me is the value of hard work.
Yeah.
The value of consistency, consistent hard work, and how it will grow your skill set over time.
You hit it right on the head. the idea of competition and that idea of, you look at your football team and you guys sucked, but the growth personally as a team, everything that you guys went through, that came from continuing to put forth that effort every day because you wanted to get better, because deep down inside, every man is competitive at its core. I'm not necessarily going to go out on a limb and say that every man is necessarily competitive, because I think it's a worthwhile conversation to transition over to the opposite of competition and how that's a blight on manliness. But for most men, deep down inside, they want to win. And that desire to make you want to win in whatever you're doing is going to help you strive for excellence and not stop trying to improve. Yeah, you might get your ass handed to you, but you're going to keep trying because you know that the lessons learned from having your ass handed to you and and what you learn from failure are going to push you, continue to inspire you for more. And that's what it's all about. And I think one of the saddest things, if you think about men in general in the world in which we live, is how many men have lost their masculinity. And with that, I think one of the very first things that men who are not masculine or have lost their way give up is that competition, that competitiveness. It's replaced with apathy. It's replaced with laziness. It's replaced with hopelessness. And it's one of the saddest things I've ever seen is when you walk into any situation. I think all of us work with guys like this. They're completely apathetic, or they're sloppy, or they just don't care. And it's almost as if the joy and the vigor that comes with being a man is completely taken from them.
So what causes that? What causes men to lose that drive, that motivation to be winners, and just makes them apathetic, to use your word?
Oh man, I'd love to get your thoughts on this, but the first thing to me that comes to my mind is repeated failure and not looking at that failure as beneficial. It's just essentially throwing in the towel.
Yep.
Because admittedly, life's hard. Bad things happen. It's really easy for somebody who's had bad things happen to them say, well, screw it. I'm not cut out for this. I'm worthless. As soon as that self-worth goes away, I think that these men they give up on themselves. I mean, I don't know what you think, but that's the first thing that comes to my mind.
I mean, the thing that comes to my mind is the fear of failure.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of our discussion a while ago on, I think it was when we were talking about, choosing the hard life. We talked about, you used your marriage, for example, where you came to a crossroads where you could either put in the hard work and maybe fail, or just fail.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about how no matter which option, even if failure is the end option, do you want to be the guy who didn't even try, or do you want to be the guy who at least put the effort in and tried? And I think a lot of guys are scared to fail. And what they don't realize is that by failing to compete, they've already failed. They've already given up. They've already lost, because there are always going to be guys in the world who will look at people like that as the weak and the prey. And they'll just go, I think about it in like a business setting, right? I look at a guy who's not willing to take the next step in his career, or to put in the effort to ask for the sale or something like that. There's, sales is a great place to talk about competition, because that's all it is basically. If you're a sales guy and you're not willing to ask for the sale, there's 3 other guys just waiting and chomping at the bit to ask for that sale. And guess what? Yeah, you may fail. You may not get that sale. If you ask for it, somebody else may get it, but you get 0% of the ones you don't ask for. So why not give it a shot? Why not try? I do think that it's that history of failure, that history of repetitive, what's the word I'm looking for? Just failures.
It's like constant fear of rejection.
Rejection was the word I was looking for. Thank you. It's just that constant rejection that just causes people, or causes guys to not try. That's wrong, man. Try. Always work. You got to work and figure out what you need to do better too. Because if you're doing the same thing over and over again, you're getting the same results, well, then something's not working. So fix it. Find that different thing.
I think that fear is a huge, huge component of it. And while you were talking about that, I had another thought. We live in a society where masculinity is inherently bad. You hear this stupid term, toxic masculinity, thrown out all the time, right? And we've gotten to a point societally where there are a lot of men who choose to reject masculinity entirely because it's inherently toxic. And I spent some time thinking why men would reject competition, healthy competition, why men would be okay in being apathetic and be okay with participation trophies and be okay with just doing your best or whatever. And I couldn't help but shake a story. I'm not going to mention who or give necessarily any pertinent details, but there's somebody I know that growing up, they had a very domineering dad. And all their dad ever told them is, I'm going to teach you to golf. I'm going to teach you to play baseball. You're going to be the absolute best at this that you can be. And their dad essentially forced them to do these things they didn't necessarily want to do. And their dad was overtly critical of them. So as a result, in an act of rebellion, this person decided to say, you know what, I'm out. I'm not going to be competitive. I'm not going to participate in sports. I'm not going to try very hard. And this person's lived a pretty sad life. So I do think that at the same time, we've been conditioned as a society to think that men are bad. And you'll see examples of poor character. Like this person's dad didn't do it the right way. But they'll use those types of things as excuses as to why competition as a whole is bad and should be rejected. Because it's a rejection of that mindset of the toxic man or toxic masculinity. And because it's a rejection of that, it's almost as if they're doing so in an act of rebellion. And that rebellion, they would rather self-sabotage themselves than necessarily kind of look at themselves in the mirror and see what good could come from pushing themselves to be more. Because this person I'm thinking of has a pretty sad life. They don't have much put together. And it came from it started with almost a rejection of wanting to try because of what society's told them. I don't know if that came out very coherently, but...
No, it makes sense. It makes sense. There's definitely a downside to forced competition.
Right.
But again, I'm going to go back to, it's not the concept of competition that is at fault. It's the person. In that case, it's the dad who's forcing this guy to be competitive in all these sports that maybe he didn't even want to play. Maybe he wanted to be a swimmer or a javelin thrower or whatever. And it's not the concept of competition, which I think is where society really kind of misses the mark, right? We talked about how masculinity is a bad thing and competition is a bad thing. It's not that. It's the resulting atmosphere that is placed or reactions that are placed on competition. You can't tell me that competition is bad when you watch the Olympics and you see some kid who's trained his entire life in a sport that he loves win a gold medal for his country and is just in tears because he's worked so hard and achieved this thing. You can't tell me that competition is bad. Or vice versa, the kid who's worked so hard and misses it by 0.2 of a second and is in tears because it's just he's put his heart and soul into it. You can't tell me competition is bad. That competition is what drove that person to be as good as they are. And they're reacting in a natural way. When you get a situation where, you get the sports dad or the pageant mom who wants to live vicariously through their child and force them to be competitive in something they may not even like, that's when competition is bad. And I'm using air quotes there. Competition isn't bad. That's bad leadership.
Yeah, I think that's where I was trying to go with that is you can't project what you want onto somebody else. Competition is an inherently and intensely personal thing. Yes, we compete against others. Yes, we compete against our friends. But it's the drive and the intestinal fortitude inside of ourselves that gets us up and gets us going. You think of even those small moments that keep you going, right? Like if I get online and I see that my buddy went to the gym today and they put up 225 on the bench, I'm going to go in and say, all right, I'm putting up 235. And then I'm going to go rub it in his face. I'm going to let him know. Because I know, for one, just by him doing that, seeing that he pushed himself, one, I'm happy for him. And I validate that by trying to essentially one-up him. That's healthy. That inherently builds bonds and friendships and brotherhood. I'm validating you if I go on a bike ride with you and you are pumping as hard as you can, because you know that if you don't go as hard as you can, that I'm going to leave you in my dust. And by you pushing, it's going to drive me and push me and inspire me to do that much more.
Not even that. if I go on a bike ride with you and you're the better bike rider and I don't try to at least keep up, you're going to lose respect for me because I'm not even trying to compete. That may sound harsh, that may sound whatever. That it's the truth of the matter. If you're out with somebody and you're doing, and listen, we're talking a lot about physical activity here. You can relate this to work too. You can relate this to school. You can relate it to a lot of different things. But much like all of our other examples, physical activity works well here. If we're out doing something and you're not pushing hard to try and keep up, to try and work hard, even though if you're everyone knows you're the less than stellar athlete, you lose face, you lose respect. Your ranking in the tribe decreases, right? To go back to our earlier concept of the prehistoric man out hunting. I'm sure, I am 100% positive that the worst hunter, as long as he was doing the best that he could and was keeping up and working hard, trying to keep up with the rest of the pack, he was respected for putting in that effort. And that's not a participation trophy. That's not just I showed up and held a spear and went after the saber-toothed tiger. We're talking about real effort, real trying to be part of the team, trying to be part of the group.
Yeah.
Keep up with the level of effort that was being put in. The same thing can be done at work. I mean, I've got guys who work for me who are just amazing with what they can do with their hands in one particular aspect, and guys who are amazing at a different aspect. And then the two may be deficient in opposing aspects. I don't judge one guy. I don't judge them all solely on one skill set. I look at it overall, and is this guy trying to be the best production technician that he can be, period? Yes, he's going to have his strengths and he's going to have his weaknesses, but is he pushing to be as good as, or if not better than the rest of the crew? Yes or no? And then that depends on what happens to him in terms of pay, what happens to him in terms of seniority, all that good stuff.
I've got another real life business example. I used to work for a financial services company and I hated my job. Oh, I hated it. But one of the things that we were asked to do was to try to produce sales leads for the financial consultants. There was some incentive there, but at the same time, it was healthy competition every single day. And I remember most every morning I would come drag my ass to work. I hated being there. I remember logging in, and then one of my buddies that worked there, I'd see him post that he'd gotten 2 sales leads within a half an hour. I was like, oh man, he brought it today. I got to catch up. And what that did is that immediately changed my mindset. Rather than allowing myself to drag through the day, sulk, and bemoan life for 8 hours, I said, all right, this is a challenge. I got to step up so that I can match his output. So I would get 3 leads. And then he in turn would get another 1 or 2. And we'd go back and forth. So what we did every day, the entire time I was there. And I will tell you one thing. By him setting the table and putting forth that effort, it would completely change my attitude. I went from sulking and being a negative asset to being a really pretty good asset for the company. And on the days where I brought it in the morning, the same thing would happen to him. I look at my current role in which we were going through a big historical revalidation project for some outstanding tickets that were sitting with development. There's a list of like 120 we had to knock out. And I essentially made it a competition between myself and a couple of my colleagues. And I took so much pride dominating that competition. And to see how engaged they became and how much hard work they put in, simply because they knew we're having a competition. Who can do the most? Who can be crowned quote unquote champion? There wasn't a financial incentive at the end of the road. I think all it was bragging rights, and I sent them some stupid gifts just to rub it in their faces. But just that act of saying, you know what? I got this. I'm going to bring it. Let's see if you can match my intensity. Got us all to work at an incredible level. And we learned a lot from it. And that was recognized throughout the company. So that competition made us better. It helped everything go much more smoothly. It helped awful jobs become much more tolerable. And ultimately, almost selfishly, it increases your performance. It raises your output. And those things are going to have tremendous results. Professionally, physically, personally. How much more impressed is your wife going to be with you if you are competitive against other men and strive to be in better shape? Or you're competitive enough to strive to be the best that you can be in whatever that might be. That makes you eminently more attractive to her. And that goes back to the Darwinian evolutionary mindset of male dominance. like that is attractive to women. I think that's something that we easily forget.
Absolutely. Women want men who are willing to put it out there and win. But it's true, right? I mean, what woman wants a man who is more apt to sit in his ass, watch TV than the guy who's working hard for the promotion, the guy who's working hard to build her the new house, the guy who's working hard to provide for the family. I can't think of any woman who would pick the lazy guy over the competitive guy. Now, that competition, this goes into a bigger picture of, in this particular instance, of competition can't come at the expense of the marriage, like we talked about last week, or the family. But there's a lot of leeway that's given in those relationships when you're working hard to provide for those relationships. I think of my wife right now. I'm working on this MBA program. There's nights and weekends where I'm not available, but it's because I'm competitively working to improve myself and my position in my career. Those are the kind of things where competition is powerful, and where to your point, it's attractive to the opposite sex.
And here's the other question: what sort of message does that send to your daughters?
Oh, that's a whole nother episode. But yeah, competition and showing that the world is not just going to give you everything on a platter, that you have to work for. So competition and hard work, I think this is a good point too, right? Competition and hard work go hand in hand. You don't find guys who work hard who aren't competitive, right? I think about like a steel worker. Those guys work their asses off, and I will bet a year's salary that they are some of the most competitive men you will find in the world. They go hand in hand. I don't care if they're playing cards, if they're playing football in the parking lot at a Steelers game, whatever it is. Those men are got to be some of the most competitive guys in the world, because when you work hard and you're a group of men, it immediately breeds competition, and that's a good thing. It gives you a little bit of a pecking order, but it also takes the group and brings the level of skill, of competency, and the bond in that group. It brings it up. Competition. This isn't something we've really got into, but competition is a great way to bond people.
Yeah.
I think there's so many different things where I've had competition bond.
I have a real life example of us. When we all got together in Maine, there's 100 men outside doing PT, 6 a.m. in Maine, early October. It's cold.
Were you going to be the one who wussed out? Because I wasn't.
And we, as a group of men, decided while Dan was running, we were doing Indian sprints, that we were all going to sprint with him around this huge circle in this huge field with 100 men, and we went hard. Every single one of us 7 men went hard. I will tell you factually, I had no idea you could run as fast as you did. I was pretty impressed, man.
I was pretty sure that I couldn't run that fast on my own. That was because of the competition.
And that was a bonding experience. Us showing 100 men, look at us compete, look at us compete together as a group of men, was intensely bonding. And that what drove us was us 7 bonding together to show all 100 other folks what was up.
Yep.
It was awesome.
Were you in the IC the month we did the rucking challenge?
That was right before me.
So that was another great example of how hard things in competition bonded guys. So the premise was basically you got a point for every mile that you walked, and then you got to multiply it by whatever weight you carried. So if you carried 30 pounds for 3 miles, you got 90 points. And it was a cumulative team thing. So this was before our team even existed. But the team I was on at the time, we got off to a slow start, but then all of a sudden, somebody just said, "We're in this. Let's go." And we started rucking. And what you saw was within the team, you saw guys just putting out, because you weren't going to be the guy who A, let the team down, and you weren't going to be the guy B, who was low man on the totem pole within the team. And we, at the quarter, or I think halfway point in the month, we were like bottom quarter of teams. We finished the top 5 teams, and within the top 5 teams, I think we were number 4, number 5. And we just freaking killed it. And it was competition because we were not going to let each other down, and we were not going to let each other beat us. I can remember our friend Officer Woo Woo going out doing his, seeing that I had gotten like 10 more points than him, and going back out and doing another like mile or two at night just to beat me.
Yeah.
Because it was a big FU, like a friendly FU, but you're not going to get me today.
I mean, I remember something similar. We did a push-up challenge. What was that?
Yep.
August of 2020. I remember getting videos from guys doing push-ups. I don't recommend anybody do this. This is weird. In gas station, like their car's getting pumped with gas. He's dropping down to do 30 push-ups at the gas station. And I remember there was a handful of us that were doing 150, 200, 250 push-ups a day because we wanted to win. And I remember I would see guys go in and they said, oh, I did 270. So we had a tracker, or 280.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not going to let them beat me. So I pushed. And one of the last days of that challenge, I did over 300 push-ups that day. I think it was like 320.
Do you remember, though, there were nights, too, where like guys were sending videos of like 1 or 2 push-ups just to up each other?
Yeah.
And it went into like, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
They just kept competing because they weren't going to lose that day. These are silly ones that we're talking about, and in the grand scheme of things, they don't mean anything. But they bonded. They created such a bond amongst those men.
There's a bond, but do you also remember how you felt on those days? Were those days where you were prone to slacking off and sitting down and having Doritos on your couch afterwards?
Nope.
Those are days you were a lot more productive. You got a lot more things done. You were a lot more focused. Doing things like that, healthy competition and pushing yourself to be your best produces your best.
Yeah, I mean, we experienced the same thing with the group that we did 75 Hard with at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
Do you remember? I mean, it was just constantly pushing each other to be the best that you could be.
Yeah.
And to get it done. And no excuses. Stay after it, keep up, and knock it out.
That impacts every other element of your life. Everything. Your marriage gets better when you're that focused. Your relationship with the kids gets better. Your work performance is better. Life is better when you have healthy competition and you're pushing for more.
When you boil it down, right, the concept of being competitive is wanting to be better tomorrow. Wanting to be better at something tomorrow than you are at it today. Football, writing, music, archery, work, school, whatever it is, you want to be better at it tomorrow than you are today. And that's competition. That's internal competition. That could be external competition. It's competition. Without competition, if a guy who says I'm not competitive, first of all, I call bullshit, because you are not competitive. Yeah. Every guy has competition innately built into them. If you're not willing to lose, that's when you say you're competitive. You have to be willing to lose to be competitive.
Yeah.
Right? And there's a lot of guys who are afraid of losing, afraid of failure, who will just drop the concept of competition altogether. And they see minimal gains because of it. Could you imagine going into the gym and being like, I don't want to try squatting 5 more pounds because it might not come up. You're never going to get stronger.
Right.
You're never going to get healthier, get stronger. I don't want to try running any faster or any further than I've run before because I might sprain an ankle or I might pull my calf muscle or whatever. You're not going to get better.
Yeah.
You're not going to improve. You're not going to become that better man. You have to be competitive to become a better man.
Man, that's a good line. I don't know if I can add anything to this entire episode. That's a great way to wrap it. I don't know. Do you have any other thoughts? I mean, you brought the heat, man.
I'm really passionate about competition. Like I said, it's something that I try to instill into my kids all the time. The kids that I coach, my daughters. Life is competition. So you better get used to it. You better get used to being involved in it. You better learn how to be a gracious winner and not a sore loser. I think that's a big part of this whole competition thing that we really didn't touch on. We touched on a little bit with you throwing the ping pong paddle, but
yeah,
if you compete, you're gonna lose eventually. Nobody wins forever.
Yeah, that sore loser comes from fear. It comes from ego.
Yeah, it comes from the fear of what will people think.
It's almost an imposter syndrome mentality. Everybody great loses. Michael Jordan was cut from his varsity team. Countless examples of incredible men who failed, and they failed hard. Some of the greatest men to ever live failed. Losing will happen, and losing should happen.
who is it? Was it Edison with the light bulb that had 1,000 or 10,000 ways where he didn't get it done?
Something like that. Yeah.
Failure is part of competition, and you have to embrace it and learn from it. And it's a tool. Yeah. That's what people don't get. I'll be the first to admit that for a long time, I didn't push myself to certain extents because I was afraid of failure. Once I started to embrace the concept of failure being a tool to help me improve, that's when life really kind of like a switch flipped and life started to get a lot better. Because now I was able to take more risk without fear of what my wife would think, what the boys would think, I might fail. But if I fail in a way where I can take feedback from that and I can take knowledge from that on how to improve, then it's a failure. I failed. Like there's no sugarcoating that. It's not, oh, well, you tried your best and you learned. No, I failed. And there's nothing wrong with that. I tried and I failed. And I learned and I got back up and I'm trying it again in a slightly different way or having trained more or whatever. But I'm finding a way to improve. And that's because I failed.
I mean, to echo that point, the way I started progressing in my life was when I learned that failure was okay. I think about physically, I think about with my job, I think about with relationships. I think I told you earlier on in one of the early episodes, I tried jujitsu. Well, I was too scared to try jujitsu, rather. I went to one class in 2011.
Yeah.
I didn't go back for a decade. I avoided the gym for like 6 or 7 straight years. I bounced from job to job for years, all because I was scared of failing, scared of not having what it took. And the second I stopped being afraid, the second I said, it's okay if I fail, the second everything took off. The second I, for all intents and purposes, fixed my marriage. I found a great job and I'm on an incredible trajectory there. Physically, I'm in the best shape I've ever been in, all because I learned that it was okay to fail. And then as soon as I learned that it was okay to fail and that I experienced failure and I saw it, that drive inside of me pushed me and prodded me. The first day in the gym when my performance sucked, all it did was light a fire under me and say, I've got to keep going. I'm going to come back tomorrow, do a little better. I go back the next day, do a little better. It's that internal fire, that internal drive, that competition after I learned that it was okay to fail. Got me where I am. Do I have it figured out? No. But I'm a different man than I was 10 years ago. That's for damn sure.
And I can honestly say in the 3 or so years that I've known you, I've seen you change in that mentality. I've seen you go from somebody who was, I don't know if you were afraid of failure by the time I met you, but you were definitely still cautious of it.
Oh, for sure.
And you've gotten to the point where, okay, that didn't work. What happened? Why? Improve. Do it again. Even your jump into archery. That was something when I met you, I don't think you would have even thought about doing.
Yeah.
And now you're tackling it. You're getting ready for your first hunt. There's a lot of growth there, and I'm impressed, man.
Yeah, just stick with it. I mean, I will tell you, I know we're patting each other on the back right now.
It's okay.
But seeing you push yourself and constantly be doing more and more, I see that. This isn't necessarily just in physical attributes, but how you're working on what you're working on with your family, or you're working on personally or at work. I see that. I'm like, oh man, Dan's kicking ass. I got to kick ass too.
And that's the power of competition.
Yeah.
Right. We're 2,000 miles apart, and we can still drive each other to be better through competition.
That's right.
Whether it's work, whether it's family, physical stuff, I bust our buddy Cam's chops all the time about his lifts, but we drive each other. Who's lifting more, who's working out more, that kind of stuff. It's a constant competition, but that's the healthy relationship that can be built through competition.
Yeah. Big facts. I mean, that's what it's all about. Is let's grow together, but let's grow by pushing ourselves to be the best that we can be.
Because who wants to stay stagnant? Who wants to be the same guy they were yesterday? I don't. And I would be willing to bet that no guy does, regardless of what they tell you.
Deep down, any man who is stagnant is miserable.
Yeah.
They might not ever come out and admit it, but you can see it in their face. You can see it in their demeanor. Like their soul, that joy, that boundless energy that exists in a man. When you look at a man, you're like, that guy is he's got it going on. Those men don't have that. There's a clear void. And it's sad. But it's, if you feel that you're a man like that, it's It's not too late. Start. I mean, it took me a long time to figure it out, but I did. Dan might have figured it out a little sooner, but he figured it out too. Just let's do it.
I don't know that I did any sooner because I'm that much older than you, so it might have been at the same time. But that's a good, a good little segue here, right? That there's a lot of guys that maybe are listening who are going, okay, you guys are talking about me, right? I'm that guy. I've kind of given up. Like I don't even know where to start. Start small. Find something that you can be better at tomorrow than you are today. We always fall back to physical activity. Our advice from day one of this has been to start small and to start with physical activity. Even if you're in shape, there's still something you can be doing. You can run that much faster. You can lift that much more. You can do whatever, just that much more. Start there. Become competitive in that. Become a person who works towards a goal there. And that will propagate through the rest of things in your life. I don't know if you've got anything to add to that.
Every single man has a hobby, an interest, a passion. Doesn't necessarily have to be the gym or riding a bike or doing jujitsu or anything like that. Let's just say you enjoy shooting archery. That can be very competitive, and you can start with yourself. Shoot arrows from 10 yards, try from 20, try from 25. Maybe you like throwing knives. Same thing. Maybe you like running. Time yourself for how long it takes to run. See if you can beat that time. See if you can find a buddy that wants to do that with you. Maybe it is, maybe it's writing. Challenge yourself to write more words than you did yesterday. Mm-hmm. There are ways in which growth can come, and that does not matter what that hobby is. Even if your hobby is playing Fortnite, there's probably a way you can challenge yourself there. And is that the best way you could probably go about it? No. But the fact of the matter is there's something that you do in which there's some element of competition involved, and you just might not be seeing it. It's there. Look for it. Find where you're at. Create a baseline. Improve. Find friends or other people who share similar interests. Do it with them, and you'll help level each other up. Whatever that might be. Hell, cooking. Make a really good dinner. Share it with a friend. Cook again. See which one they like better.
That's a great one, actually. That's a great life skill in general. So,
yeah.
So we've been all over the place tonight, but I think it's good. I think it's been a really good conversation. We've hit on a lot of topics. It's obviously something I'm extremely passionate about. I believe strongly that competition is a very, very, very important part of a man's life, and it also is something that without it, men and society as a whole will not better themselves. So it's something that needs to be there.
Exactly.
Appreciate the conversation. You got anything else to add?
Just that I'm going to go to the gym tomorrow morning. See what you got, man. See if you can beat me.
Let's do it.
It's chest day. I don't know what you're doing, but gauntlet laid.
All right. For all the guys who listen to us, we appreciate it, and thank you a lot. You can find the show notes on Untaming Masculinity. We'll have some links to a few articles that we found on competition as well in the show notes, so be sure to check out that. You can also find the links to our social media accounts there. Follow us there. We're pretty active. And, we've said it before, but we'll say it again. If you can leave us a 5-star review, that really helps us get the word out to other men and helps them grow. So please go to your podcast player of choice, whether it's Apple or Spotify or whatever you're listening on. Leave us a 5-star review, and that definitely helps.
And if you've got, if this message resonates with you or if any other previous ones do, share it. Let's get the word out. Let's keep this fire going.
Absolutely. So, again, great conversation. Thanks a lot, buddy. And we will catch you all next week.